Hello and welcome to the Reiki Women podcast. I am Carrie Varela with the Reiki Healing Society, and today my beautiful colleague is here with me, Bronwen Logan from Reiki with Bronwen, and our dear friend Michaela Daystar is in a traffic jam somewhere, unable to attend today. So we wish her the best getting home safely. And today I wanted to talk about a topic that is kind of interwoven into the practice of Reiki and many other healing modalities, and it's the breath. So we're going to talk about how we use the breath within Reiki and the benefits of these big belly breaths that we get to do for ourselves and for others. And maybe before we even start that, let's
Mm.
just take a breath together. How about that? Three
Mm.
breaths. Big inhale. Big deep exhale. Breathe in like your whole body's breathing in. Breathe out like your whole body is exhaling. Just one more of those nourishing breaths. And then I'd love to pass it over to Bronwen. Bronwen, tell us what you think about the relationship between Reiki and breath.
I guess, well, it sort of comes initially down to the relationship between breath and life. So, breath, it's something obviously that we consider gives us life. And so it sort of indicates the beginning of our existence in this world as human beings. And it also indicates the passing of us from this life as human beings when the breath leaves us. So it has a deep meaning for us. And I guess it's also a barometer of the life that we've led. So the Taoists say that we're born with a certain number of breaths in the body. And that's always fascinated me. It's one of my little tiny facts that I love to repeat again and again. But, it is that thing that imagine if we breathe more slowly, then according to the Taoists, we have a longer life. But it's more than that. It's if we breathe more deeply and more slowly, we're actually calmer. And I think that's a great part of this. So if we're calmer, that means we're going to have a much more peaceful life. If we're existing with very short, jagged breaths, we'll be living with anxiety, anger, fear, and it's all coming out in the breath. And it also means that, according to the Taoists, we'll have a shorter life. And in fact, forget the Taoists for a moment, because we probably will have a shorter life, because we are going through we're putting our energy into all of these energy sucking practices like fear and anger. And so I do think that the breath is like a barometer, and it can, if we pay attention to it, it can help us to live a much more peaceful, calm, healthy existence. So taking those breaths, it did, when I first thought about it in relationship to the system of Reiki, I immediately thought of Sunmitsu, and Sunmitsu being the three diamonds. So we have the earth energy, the heaven energy, and the heart energy. Now, the heart energy is often called uh, breath. Yep. So, some people might think of it as uh, so, like body, mind, and soul, body, mind, and spirit. But in Japan, it's often body, mind, speech, or body, mind, breath. And so we can see that it is this integral part of what it means to be a human from a spiritual practice as well, because Sanmitsu sits at the base of our spiritual practice in the system of Reiki. It is, if you like, I think I used to call it, it's like our energetic practice, or energetic system that lies beneath our practice. So when we are breathing in and out, we are actually blending the earth and the heaven together at the heart. And the breath is this thing that connects the earth and the heavens together. And we become this beautiful, blended, perfectly harmonized being. And in reality, if we're thinking about what do we want with the system of Reiki, what's the purpose of it? And it is to bring us harmony, to bring us balance. And breath is the point that brings these elements together. And when we have these three elements balanced and in harmony, so the earth, the heavens, and the breath, or if you like, we can go to their correlations of mind, body, breath. If we have those three things balanced, then we are living a very peaceful, harmonious existence. And our well-being is our is the pinnacle, a good well-being is the pinnacle of our existence, if you like. So this is where I feel like I'm moving to when I'm working with the system of Reiki, trying to find that balance and harmony, and it always comes in through breath. There's a lot more to talk about, the practices or whatever, there's different things, but I'm going to hand you over to Carrie, and she's going to give a little bit of a different take on it as well.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, I think, we could question, does emotional dysregulation come from our emotional body, what's going on with us, or does it come from shortening our breath too? I mean, really, they're so interrelated.
Yeah.
And, whether it be a Reiki treatment that I'm leading or a yoga class, in particular yoga, the first thing we really want to tap into is our breath. And breath is such an integral part of it. And I think sometimes when we're on a Reiki table, we might not necessarily be as connected to our breath as we would be in a yoga class. But I love it. I love that moment where either somebody in my yoga class or on my Reiki table just takes one of those organic long breaths out. And it's like, you can feel like, oh, there's like a big release happening for them. There's something they're really able to let go of. And then you think about just the shift that can happen with doing one breathing exercise. And maybe even it's just 3 breaths, and you really can relax into those breaths and make them a little bit bigger. You will see just a very small shift, maybe even a big shift in your emotions and your well-being. And I took a yoga class once, and it was really fascinating. We talked, the whole theme of the yoga class was on inspiration. And we were thinking about it in the context of just, feeling inspired in our life, of course, but also the breath as an essential part of that. And if you look at the Latin root of the word inspiration, it means spirit within us. And I think that goes back to what you're talking about too, Bronwen, is that our breath is just this vital energy of life and aliveness. And I've been reviewing some stuff from Reiki Level 1 recently, and I was looking more about the definition of ki of Reiki. And, there's so many ways you can translate ki. You can translate it just as energy. You could translate it as life force energy. But another way you can translate it is the breath. And it's just, the mere fact that we're breathing in and out is indicative of life force energy.
Yeah.
And meaning that, whoever's breathing is alive. And that can even come in different forms too, right? And our, the plants in our house are breathing as well. We don't see that, but saw some fact the other day that if you have at least one plant for every 100 square foot in your house. Like it helps purify the air that you breathe, and the air quality in your home is typically a lot better. Um, but I think about too, just that whole thing of when our nervous system is dysregulated. The tendency is like, let's say we're locked into an anxiety feeling, or triggered by some worried thought, or maybe angry as well. So there's kind of this tendency to resist the breath and to resist breathing deeply, but that's exactly what can disrupt that emotional response. And so when we're in a contracted space, it's hard to breathe. But when we can calm ourselves enough to breathe deep in and out, then we can enter a more expansive space. And I think that's where we can get more emotional release. And just physiology, what it does to us, like the, more shallow we're breathing, the more stress response is going on in the body, the more we can kind of cycle down that tunnel of emotional dysregulation, nervous system dysregulation. And there's so much to say about the breath from perspective of yoga too. So maybe I'll hand it back to you, and I'll chat more about that.
Yeah, I thought it was lovely just talking about ki. If we look at Ray, so we're looking at Reiki, right? And so if you look at Ray, which has this visual image of what the practice actually is, and Ray meaning, well, could mean spiritual, could mean, great, big. So it tells that story of the beginning of humanity, if you like. Yep. That's the way we take it, I think, because we are ego-based beings. But it's the beginning of life, I think. But let's say that it's the beginning of humanity, and you have at the top of the image of Ray, you have the heavens, and at the bottom you have the earth, which is what I was just talking about with the body. And in the center, you have these three cups, and the three cups are humanity, are us. And these three cups are body, mind, and breath once again. So the breath sits at the center of at the center of the heavens and the earth in the three cups. That's the breath, and it's also us. So we can see this direct correlation in the Japanese culture between what it means to be human and to be balanced as a human in harmony with our environment, to be a mirror of the universe, and the universe to be a mirror of us. So at the very center of all of that is the breath. And I know we know it's important, but it's lovely to see it mirrored in those sorts of images. I also think if we look at the practices within the system of Reiki, probably, the most well-known practice within the Japanese art of Reiki is Joshin Kokyoho. And Joshin Kokyoho translates to purification of the mind and the heart through breath. Kokyu is breath. Yep. So we are working with breath to bring about purification. And this has been the theme throughout from the beginning of this conversation, really. It's about us finding our way back into balance, and how we do that, and how we use breath to do that. And Joshin Kokyoho is our foundation practice, and it's actually telling us that through the breath, we bring about this balance and harmony by purifying our minds and our hearts. And when they talk about minds and hearts, they're talking about this interlinked aspect of ourselves. The mind and the heart, they call it kokoro, and it's not two separate things, it's one thing. And the mind and the heart together are the emotions and the thoughts, and linking together. And these things are not separate. So we want to be able to work with these things, which is what we do with Joshin Kokyoho. So we're working with the mind, we're working with the emotions, and it's the breath that actually calms those things, which marries what you were just saying, Carrie, as well, that we are using the breath to bring about um, a peace within ourselves. And that is a piece for the mind and a piece for how we're feeling. So we're bringing those things down into the body. When we breathe down into the hara, so down into our deep bellies, and when we breathe down into the hara, we're bringing the mind down into that area as well. We're relaxing our heart, and we're allowing this blending of these three areas to come together to give us a much more peaceful experience, rather than us being up there. We're actually down here, and we're letting it all sit and not getting too worked up about things. This is a really helpful way to experience our life, because the last thing we want to do is have confrontation, to be angry, to argue, and all of those things are related to the breath, and that's when the breath goes up. So we want to allow these things to relax. It allows the heart, the actual physical heart, to relax, the arteries to relax, and we're going to live a lot longer and a lot healthier and happier.
I love that analysis of like the ray symbol, and that the breath is really at the center of all of that. And it's so true, it's so true. It really sits at the heart of, not just the Reiki practice, but so many different healing techniques really work on the breath. And I was thinking about that interrelationship between the breath and yoga. And in yoga, the BKS Iyengar, a very important yogi who brought the lineage of yoga to the West. There's one of the many people who brought yoga to the West. But he says, that the breath is the king of the mind. And so many practices within yoga are about shifting out of mental states, using the breath. And when I was traveling through India about 10 years ago, a little bit more than that now, I was traveling through India, and I happened upon somebody on the train. I was going to this town called Varanasi, which is like right on the Ganga River, and I ran into an Italian traveler, and we ended up hooking up and just traveling together. But she told me of somebody that was a yogi in Varanasi, or a yoga teacher in Varanasi, and so I was, of course, very interested, and we ended up connecting with this yoga teacher, and he had a beautiful yoga shala right off of the Ganga River. And he was a Brahmin man, and definitely like a renunciant, like he wasn't going to marry, and was living the path of yoga as it's described, as it is in India. Although there's some flexibility there, but he was living as a renunciate. Yeah, and then it was just really cool to connect with him. He made us this beautiful khichdi meal, and then I think we ended up doing like 3 or 4 different classes with him while I was there. And one of them, or even more of them, was just complete pranayama. Pranayama being the breathing exercises in yoga, and that was the hardest class I've ever been to, because there's something so challenging about just sitting still, focusing on your breath, doing these prescribed breathing exercises, and it does create profound emotional shifts. And anyone who facilitates breath work knows that, amazing things can happen, and big releases can happen, but it's also just so challenging. It's not easy to just sit there, focus on your breath, and that like kind of antsiness. yeah, it was really, really, really hard to work with. And so when I teach a yoga class, like the breath is just usually just such a small portion of, I mean, it's kind of infused throughout the class, but doing a prescribed breathing exercise. We would never go over like 5 rounds of doing a prescribed breathing exercise, but can you imagine like doing that for 60 minutes? It's just really, yeah, it's intense and challenging, but transformative. Um, Also thinking about that relationship between ki or life force energy on the yogic word prana. Prana, same guy, BKS Iyengar, he says that prana is it's not just the breath, it's our mental energy, it's our emotional energy, it's our sexual energy. It is like the essence of who we are. It's the animation of who we are. And so I think that's very analogous to what ki is representing, and even Reiki is
Mm.
representing too. Um, and that yeah, this is it's not it's also the carry of our mind and emotion. And Um, so, when you think about breathing exercises within Reiki, there's really a lot. You mentioned Josh and Kokyo, and I love that exercise. And I love also the definition that you gave. It's this capacity of our breath to bring us back into a pure heart and mind. And I think that piece of balance, a pure heart and mind, I mean, it just speaks to the end result of any practice, is that we want to return back to that and a pure heart and mind. And I think sometimes within spiritual communities and sometimes within Reiki communities, not to speak badly about anybody, but there's this kind of desire to do something otherworldly, to be, out of our mind, to, get wisdom and insight from, celestial beings and things like that. And that, is absolutely lovely, but also recognizing the beauty of just coming back to yourself and feeling centered and grounded in yourself, that um, might not be the sexiest result of a Reiki class, a Reiki session, or Reiki practice, individual practice, but it is so nourishing, so
Yeah.
nourishing.
The other thing that other part of the system of Reiki, I guess, when I'm thinking about breath, well, there's a few elements actually, aren't there? But I was just thinking about Reiki treatments, and that when we're with a client, that we sit into this space, we move into this space, which is a breath filled space, and it's the breath that guides us into this depth of this healing space that we move into, and we offer that space to our clients, so we're sharing that space. And I'm sure that practitioners often that they'll be able to relate to this, but there is that sense of that we share the same breath almost as we're deep in a Reiki treatment. When the client moves into that depth with us, that it's like breath is not just my breath, but it is this universal breath, and it's where we're flowing with the natural world and finding our way back to ourselves through that breath. And that's a really special experience for both the client and the practitioner. I guess other aspects are chanting, of course. When we chant, we can chant the Reiki precepts in English or Japanese. I specifically prefer in Japanese. It's lovely to do. And then we have the chanting of the mantras that are aligned with the symbols. Once again, to chant is a hara. So from the hara, from the deep belly, breath-fueled breath that comes out of the body, and on that is sound. And so when we talk about humans being body, mind, and breath, there's also body, mind, and speech. So we're talking about what is coming up and out of the body. And it's as if we are just simply allowing that breath to express us in another way. And it's also very clearing in as we practice, because we have there's a lot of physical things going on here. We have the body vibrating, we have the breath moving out, we have the mind choosing the mantras and working with the mantras. So we're really making that a full body experience, but at its heart is the breath. So chanting as well is, a very beautiful part of that. And I guess, look, if we're going to go through all the elements, so we did the treatments where, mantras and symbols. So the mantras, the chanting the Reiki precepts, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to do, and to work with the breath with that. And Reiju. So when we're in Reiju, thinking back to what I just said about hands-on healing, same experience. Teacher going into this healing space, opening that up, the student moving into that, and together sharing that breath, that space together. And what other element have I forgotten? Hands-on healing, symbols and mantras.
May the raise you.
Yeah, I just did the Reiju. I've gone blank. Precepts, or maybe I did do the 5, I just can't count. How about that? Let's say that. So but we can see the breath, the meditations and techniques, which we've already discussed. So, we can see the breath flowing through these different elements of every aspect of the system of Reiki, simply because the system of Reiki is about being human. And what is at the core of being human, as I said at the beginning, brings us in and brings us out of this life. It's breath.
Beautiful. So poignant. I in I don't know why I'm just contrasting with yoga here, because I feel like you're saying so much about Reiki. So,
Cool.
but in yoga, they thought about the first breath as being totally like that first breath that you take is pure
Mm.
Shakti. And
Mm.
Shakti, I think also really a great, similar concept to Ray and Ki, and like Shakti being like that physical material world, the actual physical body, that earth element. And that as we breathe in that first breath, like we're literally breathing in like all that's possible in our life.
Mm.
And same when we die, that last breath as it exits the mouth, like the soul is just taken up. And kind of interestingly, and Varanasi is a very auspicious place to die or be cremated. And so actually the whole area around there is totally deforested. And but a lot of people pay, just exorbitant amounts of money to, be cremated in Varanasi, because it's thought that there's this portal that's open to the heavens there, and so that you're more likely to be reincarnated or have a more auspicious reincarnation if that soulful energy is departed in sacred spaces.
I
Um,
almost died in Varanasi, so maybe it was very auspicious.
you almost like
I ended up in hospital in Varanasi.
really well. An interesting place because so many people, so many bodies are burning and that it
Yeah.
smells. I would wear like a white shirt there, and like by the end of the day, it's just all, you know, it's all dirty and tarnished because there's so much smoke in the air. So, um, I'm glad you didn't die there, but
Me too.
it's kind of a sketchy place a little bit. Um, yeah.
Mm. Hey, I was just thinking of another element of the system of Reiki that actually works with breath, if you like, just because of what you were saying then about, that first breath and creation, really. Creation is breath, right? And I'm sure Shakti is about creation, right? And so if we look at the fourth symbol and mantra in the system of Reiki, that is, the great bright light. And the deity attached to that is Dainichi Nirei. And Dainichi Nirei has a specific mantra that goes with the deity. And the simplified mantra is simply Ah, and that is the beginning of the universe, right? And so it is that it's so beautiful, isn't it? Those elements when it's just like the opening, and to just chant is beautiful and meaningful, and it is the beginning of everything that exists. So uh, we can find breath in so many, the importance of breath in so many different aspects.
Yeah, and there's something really powerful about just like breathing out with the sound ah
Oh,
too, like
simple.
ah,
Yeah.
that's a natural intonation of a sigh, or that feeling when your whole body releases, and with that release comes
Mm.
releasing exhale. And, I'm thinking about kokiho too, which is a method of sending Reiki with the breath, and the Reiju process as well. That I don't use it so much nowadays, but pre-COVID, there was a lot more breathing on the person who's being receiving a Reiju, and I tend to make my breath a little bit lighter now, but when I first learned Reiki, I learned a technique that included a breathing like deep down, from the crown into the body. Um, and I think that the breath, is a profound carrier of Reiki, like for all the reasons that we've been talking about. But there's this intellectual, like, oh, I know that, oh, breath, yeah, energy. But when you're in that experience of it, where you just feel this soulful energy emanating from your breath, or sometimes if you see energy in colors, like there might be some colors associated with that, and or just some sparkle, some essence of the breath that's just there with you. It's really meaningful. And when you think about the fact that we breathe like 23,000 breaths every day,
Mm.
it's pretty profound how much, this is just innate linking of ourselves to life. And I think when we choose to breathe consciously, we are choosing life. We're choosing to take in that sustenance that the air provides. I had another thought there, but I lost it. So
Well, I just remembered another one actually. I mean, I think it's, it's sprinkled everywhere, or it's not even sprinkled, it's quite strong within the system of Reiki everywhere, because the other part that I was just remembered is in the manual that the association in Japan use, that they have a question and answer with Mikao Usui, and he says in that we heal with the eyes, the hands, and the breath. And it really is. I always, I've done actually a whole web class on that, because it's the eyes, the hands, and the breath are representative of Sun Mitsu, of these three elements. So the eyes moving into the mind, and the hands being the body, and the breath being at the center. So we're actually, when he's talking eyes, mind, breath, he's actually talking about how we heal with the entire self. And a major part of that is breath.
I love that.
Mm.
I've been thinking, so yeah, a lot about that very profound statement,
Mm.
body, body or hands, eyes, breath, and it is an analogy of something deeper, and this kind of general cultural knowledge that's perfused through Japan. But from our Western lens, we probably
Yeah.
wouldn't know that unless we knew more about the culture of Japan.
Mm.
I guess I've been thinking a lot too about, I mean, I know you talked about the precepts, but chanting the precepts, but also the first line of the precepts is just for today. And so, of course, also the breath connects us to the present moment. And that is, it's one of the most profound links to the present moment. And I actually have this scrolling image. Maybe I'll bring it over here, but that's not. But I have this image over here as of me, and oh no, I unplugged it. Can you see it? No, you can't see it.
It's a bit dark, but yes.
Okay, well, it was me in Bali, and I'm just sitting next to this beautiful ornate wall of this temple in Bali, chilling, and there's just a vibe there with that memory, but I can never go back to that memory. The breath that I breathed in that moment, it's gone, it's gone. And the only breath links me to now, who I am today. And of course, all those memories I take with me and they're a part of me, but um, yeah, breath. And so I often, start a yoga class or a Reiki session with just this invocation to just breathe your presence into your body,
Mm.
um, bringing the fullness of your presence into this moment. And you know, that's really powerful medicine, right? Because our mind is so often like spinning off in different directions,
Oh, absolutely.
triggered
In
by.
fact, yeah, it just reminded me that when I start a Reiki treatment, I always ask the client to take three deep breaths down into their bellies while they're lying there. And there's so many reasons for that, but for me, the main reason is because it takes their head, their mind, and it brings it down to their belly because they start thinking about their belly instead of thinking up here about, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's a Reiki treatment. What'll happen? What are all the stuff that they've walked into the room with by simply just breathing down into their belly when they're lying on the table. They are getting their mind to what I was doing at the beginning, saying just to calm, to be peaceful, because it's sitting somewhere in a peaceful, energetic space. And that's really beautiful. I did actually think of some more things. I could go on forever.
Oh, just keep going on and on and on. I love it.
Well, no, I was thinking when you spoke about the Reiki precepts. So we've got the 5 precepts with the little introduction of for today only. But underneath that, we've got like chant 3 times, right? So it's telling us to work with the breath with this, yeah. And it's saying 3 times. And by 3 times, often in this way, it just means repetitively to bring it in as much as possible. It doesn't mean like only 3 times. It means 3 times, like as many times, just keep doing it. Yeah. And which also brought me to um, Waka poetry, because that was used in the early forms of the system of Reiki, and I am really intent on using it in all my practices now. I am so hooked, and I'm especially hooked. I know it's the Emperor Meiji that they talk about, but I'm so hooked on the Empress's stuff. It's so beautiful, and I'm going to put this question out there. Did they use the Empress's Waka in the system of Reiki? And I can see that they would have, because it is as beautiful, if not more beautiful. She at the age of 4, she could read like these big, I can't think of the name of the book, but like a traditional Japanese book on Japanese poetry. She was a totally skilled, she had a special skill with poetry. And she actually has one of her poems, she talks about that ancient people used to chant 3 times, and why, how can we find that in our lives today to work in the same way? interesting, links into the bottom of the Reiki precepts where we talk about chanting 3 times. And it's all about bringing our spiritual practice into our life repeatedly and doing it through voice work. So chanting. And I love that, all those connections. It's really beautiful.
So beautiful.
Mm.
Well, I have a couple more things now. One of the things is also just the importance of a fresh breath, but it's not just breathing inside. It's like getting outside. And right now it's been kind
Mm.
of March. We're filming this on the leap day of February, and it's winter time, right? And you just don't spend as much time outside. But you know that feeling of when you walk outside and that
Yeah.
fresh breath that you take, or
Mm.
um, we had some clients who were coming in from out of town and they're staying at a vacation rental in my area, and it's actually up in the mountains. And so I drove up to the mountains to give them a Reiki session. And, just as soon as you arrive, you step out of your car and you're just in this recycled air. And then you get into a place that's in the woods and you take that fresh breath. It's like, there's so much in that, like just so much that's happening for our nervous system. And I think my dog, when he gets to go outside and just, how much he must be getting from those fresh breaths from being outside. And
Yeah.
when we're sick or something like that, how we really should force ourselves to go outside and get some fresh air. And so there's a relationship between the breath and nature as well. And the more I've worked with the 5 healing elements, earth, water, fire, air, and space, which are basically the same in systems of yoga and those system of Reiki, we can work with those both interchangeably, or they're both, they are present, 5 healing elements. And there's different practices in yoga, different practices in Reiki, but it's some philosophical foundation that they share. And I just think about the beauty of like how with every breath in we are breathing in the sky. And if we can, it's so easy to lose that mindset. But times when I have gotten to my yoga class and realized like I had not been breathing very well and my body just felt starved of breath, and like I just, like the feeling, the shift, the quality of energy moving through me has so much to do with the quality of the breath. And sometimes when I'm meditating, I just visualize this bright sky in my chest, like in this heart area, in this place in yoga where we say that we hold that air element. And yeah, just knowing that it's just so interwoven into our life is the breath, and we all can share that. And it's like this halo around the earth, our atmosphere. And same when we're breathing and in harmony and balance, there's a halo around us. There's a joy, there's radiance.
There's another thing that I always say, and that is that energy flows on the breath.
Mm.
And so, it's just, as you're just saying, it's just so intricate, and it can't be pulled apart. And it's just a part of our practice, and everything that we do, wherever we move, it's there. And it's great, as you're saying, to bring your consciousness to it. And that's why we practice our practices, because it's like a little, oh yeah. And how's my breath? Where is my breath? And whenever any practice, any time that I ever do, the first thing that I think of is the breath. It's like it's like the ritual that brings me into any practice.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I first met you, Bronwen, or we were like kind of corresponding back and forth, and you had like this little clip at the end of your email, and it was like maybe a 3-minute visualization or something like that. But I remember how, there's sometimes this like kind of ego tendency in how we relate to people and being like, who is that? Is she this really spiritual superstar? Blah, blah, blah. Well, turns out you are. But I remember like all of that head stuff, ego stuff just dispelled when you just invited us in that video to breathe
Mm.
in and out. And there was something, just so human that we got to share together in that. And yeah, so. And I love that you talk. I can't wait to dive into your Waka 21-day journey. I'm
Oh,
going
I'm
to.
loving it so much. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Good.
Booked.
All right, dear listeners, we love you. I hope that this episode gave you some really wonderful inspiration to keep your breath strong and keep that connection between your breath and your Reiki practice strong. Maybe you're like us. You have a million stories about the breath. You didn't even know it. I didn't even know we could fill an hour talking about breath, but here we are. So maybe you'd like to share with us your breath stories, your experiences, the interrelationship between Reiki and breath for you, or Reiki and some other practice that you do. So we'd love to hear from you, and we just honor each of you. So thank you so much for being a part of our family, our community. We wish you a wonderful, wonderful day, and can't wait to see you again next time. So.
Bye.
Bye.